we got this morning?
Zach, good morning. Curious, the entire season in general, you look at a game like Friday night, for example. You guys have 8 players, 2 of them on standard contracts. You're going up against 2 of the best players in the world on a team with a lot to play for. On paper, it looks like a blowout, and yet you guys take them down to the wire. It felt like there were a lot of games like that this year where you guys maybe fought above your heads compared to what was on paper. I'm curious, the season as a whole, given the circumstances, what do you think it said about the competitive standard and spirit that you guys have established inside this building and the organization?
Yeah, reflecting on this season, once it became clear that, maybe wasn't our year, from an injury standpoint, from a health standpoint, from the way the season started, we, putting our heads together, we really wanted to make a point of, let's get something, out of these games that we have in front of us. Let's compete to win, every night. And every conversation that Taylor and I had, it's let's make sure we're developing in a way that we can build off of into next season. Unique spot, right, for a team that has the level of, proven success, at some level, that we've had over the last couple of years, and talent level, certainly with aspirations, next year and beyond to win at the highest level, of the NBA. So we certainly made a point of trying to maintain that level of competitiveness, and I'm proud of the group. We competed to the very last game. We competed, in this last week with who we had available against some of the better teams, some of the more talented teams, certainly in the NBA. And that's something we take pride in. We wanted to make this stretch matter on court developmentally, on court from a competitiveness standpoint, and transactionally, we wanted to go and see what we could kind of unearth. Like, let's see what we could find. It's going to be weird this week not signing more 10 days, right? But like we've had many opportunities, in recent months to see who's out there? Who could we find on a 2-way? Who could we find on a 10-day? Who could be part of this team, going forward? And I think in several instances, and can talk about, anyone you guys want to touch on, Scottie Pippen Jr., for example, someone who we're excited. I think Scottie's proven that he's an NBA player, Trey Jemison showed, flashes and I think improved over his time with the team. We wanted to really make sure that this is a unique spot to be in. Let's look back, hopefully a few years from now and say, no, that was something that was an accelerant to be able to get to where we know we can get to.
Hey Zach, when you talk about the reflection part of this season, second half of the year, you played Jaren exclusively at center more than at any point in the past. One, how do you think that projects into the future? Like, do you see him now more so as a center than a power forward? And then 2, how does the second half of this season, Jaren's, him playing center, kind of project into what you potentially will do in the offseason in terms of building around that?
Yeah, I think nothing's changed there. Honestly, I think I touched on that at least briefly maybe at the deadline. We wanted to embrace this stretch with Jaren playing more of the 5 from a developmental standpoint, where I think when we look ahead to trying to get through several rounds of the playoffs, against some teams, Jaren's going to have to be the 5. I think we probably are best positioned if Jaren is playing the 5. That being said, from a roster building standpoint, I think we see the value of having, a more traditional or true, whatever you want to call, a big. We've seen Jaren successful with those type of lineups as well. So we wanted to give Jaren those reps as a screener, as a roller, as a ball handler, as a 5, spreading things out. And I think Jaren did an unbelievable job, making the most of those opportunities. Our hope was that, those reps could be meaningful, as we're thinking about the context that Jaren's going to have to be successful in for us to be the best team we can be, I think, in the playoffs. So I don't think that changes anything from a team building standpoint. Throw that Brandon Clark was able to come back and we were able to get more reps of Jaren and BC together. When we, kind of talked earlier about Brandon coming back, that this was the hope that he, for himself, could have momentum to build on going into next season. For the team, we wanted him to have an opportunity to play with guys who he's going to be playing with, next season. So that's a pairing that we still very much believe in going forward as well. Whoever you want to call the 4 and you want to call the 5, in that pairing.
With Marcus Smart under contract next season, team option on Luke Kennard.
Yep.
and then you've had Vince Williams, Gigi Jackson, and Jake LaRavia all sort of emerge over the course of the season. Do you feel like that's a wing rotation you'd be comfortable taking into next season, given the expectations for next season?
Yeah, it's a wing rotation that I think we're really encouraged by. We went into some recent drafts and went into this season hoping that, some wings would emerge that we would have confidence in going forward. And I think, everyone that you named has either shown, some of them are much more established players, obviously, that, we had a lot of confidence going, in a guy like Marcus Smart, for example. But of the younger guys, I mean, Vince Williams, I think Vince has proven that he's someone that we have a lot of confidence in, right? To play a significant role, it can play different kinds of roles, but it will be significant, next season. I think Vince has shown that while being able to wear, a lot of different hats, he can impact winning, in different types of roles. Gigi Jackson, I think looking ahead to next year, Gigi's opportunity will be what is he ready for? We hope we're certainly gonna continue to push Gigi and challenge him, and we all see what Gigi's capable, of doing, and the extent to which that role continues to grow, or it'll be based on what is Gigi ready for next year. That'll play itself out, I think, on the court. Jake's first sustained opportunity to really play. Sometimes having the opportunity to be out there and play through mistakes, for various reasons, including health. Jake just hadn't really had that opportunity until a month or two ago. And there's more work to be done, but I think it was an encouraging stretch, for Jake, and definitely something to build on. So, from my standpoint, we're continuing to build towards the championship until we win a championship, and all facets of the roster, of course, we're gonna reflect and see where can we get better. But I think all of the players that you named, Luke, maybe you mentioned as well. Luke is someone we continue to feel, strongly about, someone who we, of course, brings a skill set that I think is important for this team and important in this NBA. Have decisions, to make on him that we'll make, coming up. But I think all of the players that you mentioned are individuals that we view as potentially important to our success going forward.
Looking forward, I know you're not going to be able to make any fundamental decisions after the draft lottery, but for roster construction for next year, what factors are you going to take into whether going to the draft to build through the draft or going through free agency and reconstructing through free agency?
Yeah, I think, kind of the next major date on the calendar is the draft lottery. We'll have more information, obviously, about where what pick do we have, at that point, which begins to allow us to think through, next steps. I think we're going to be open-minded on what we can do with that pick. If on lottery night, we move up, what I would have to say is, oh, this is great, we've moved up. We're either going to take the best player available or trade the pick. If we don't move up on lottery night, I would say, oh, we still have this great pick. We're either going to trade the pick or pick the best player available. That's an opportunity. We know what we want to address. I think I've said it before. Like I envision we'll add at least a big, probably a big who would be part of the rotation, whether that's a starting big or rotational big. I think we have some work, to do on the roster there, definitely. That could be done by free agency, draft, trade. There's different ways we could go about it. I think we'll have a better idea once we know where we are in that draft. I think the doors that are open are, may well be different depending on which players could be in a certain range and which players might be available, in trades, depending on where that pick lands. So that'll be, the allow us to really, start working through it.
Zach, I know the end of this season was, prioritizing health and recovery for some of the frontline guys. Can you sort of give an update on the status of Ja, some of those guys, Ja, Dez, just go through the list of the priority guys that didn't finish the season? Yeah,
absolutely. I'll work through it, and if there's anyone else you're curious about, please just chime in, and I can touch on anyone. We've certainly had more than enough on that list lately. Ja's doing really well. Ja's on schedule right now. I would say he's expected to be fully cleared for basketball activities maybe halfway, through the offseason. That was a 6-month recovery timeline post-surgery. He is on track, hitting everything he's supposed to be on that. Ja's been very diligent, with his work. He's been around the team, pouring into that every day. Expected to be fully cleared and have had normal, basketball reps well ahead of training camp. So Ja's in a great spot. Dez had a back flare up. That's a weeks, not months, injury. Bummer that, great that he was able to get back and play with Jaren, play with, some of our guys. Brandon, I think they got a game together. Great to build on for next season. There's nothing where there's, I would say, a high level of concern. I don't think there's anything other than Ja. Ja is still months, but on track. Everyone else, I think, I would say, is probably in terms of a weeks of recovery remaining to be, fully cleared and have a healthy offseason and not months, if that gives enough clarity there.
Given the way that this season played out with all of the injuries, do you feel like you were able to properly diagnose what some of the weaknesses may be and the direction that you need to improve some of those weaknesses? And what did you identify as areas where this team needs to improve going into next season?
Yeah, I think we're, always honest with ourselves about, where are we encouraged by the roster's progress and where can we get better, where are there opportunities to get better. I think the one that obviously stands out, certainly after the trade deadline, where I think we did create flexibility that will help us, improve the roster in general, going forward, but it's probably adding a big. That doesn't mean we're not going to – it's no stone unturned. Every opportunity that we can look at, to continue to build around our core group and put them in the best possible position to be successful going into next season where we have, very high, belief of what this group can achieve together. We're going to look at it, but that there's one that stands out, obviously, and we're not really trying to hide the ball on that.
With Ja specifically, he's played so little over a year and a half span, it feels like. Yep. What have you sensed from him when you've spoken to him in terms of his mindset and sort of how do you hope he takes all of this in, what he's gone through here, both, with the off the court stuff a year ago, but then dealing with a major injury almost just as soon as he comes back? Yeah,
one of the it's not a disappointment, but I hated it for Ja and I hated it for the group that so soon after making, some real strides in the right direction, getting back on the court, and the group putting it together. When we had some opportunities to play some of the better teams in the NBA when this group was closer to full strength, I thought that was encouraging, including for Ja himself. So to have a season-ending injury, and rug kind of pulled out, from under him, hated that for him. He's recalibrated. He's committed himself, very well, I think, to the rehab process. He's just excited to get back. There's a patience that's not fun, and that in where the season's been at, I think for all of us, it's I have ideas of what I want to do, and I can't even act on them, for months at this point. Still, we need to know where we're picking. We need to get to a point where you can transact again. We're excited to, be able to carry through on all of those things. I think for Ja, he just, he's been putting in the work. I think he's taken significant strides in his off-court approach. I think he'd be the first to tell you, still that he's not fully formed and he's continuing, to work on himself. And no one should get complacent on any fronts. To be able to achieve what we're setting out to achieve, you have to be carry yourself with purpose and urgency, and I think Ja's doing that. I'm encouraged by Ja's progress. The work continues, but I do think Ja's very much moving in the right direction.
We'll have time for 2 more questions. So Chico and then Colin.
Hi. Yeah, could you please talk about Yuta Watanabe's improvement since he was here as a two-way player to a standard NBA player?
Yeah, I think it was great having Yuta back with us. Obviously, he's been out for a little bit of a stretch here, but nonetheless, it's been great to have him, back with our group. Yuta's someone whose game, I think, has grown considerably, since his first stop with us. Becoming, a real knockdown shooter from three, continuing to work on his body. He's always been someone that I think is kind of embodies the DNA of what we're about. He's a very team-first player, very selfless, competitive, really goes about things the right way, and I think on all fronts of his game, there's been real growth.
Hey Zach, so a year ago in the same room, you guys made it a point that you wanted to add more veteran presence in the locker room with certain things happening. Do you think you saw that type of maturity and growth this season, and despite all of the the injuries?
Yeah, I think there's been significant growth. Would give a lot of credit to Derrick Rose, who, that may not have played as many games as he hoped to this year and as we hoped, for him to be able to play. But Derrick Rose has made a very significant impact. Just the presence that he has, the perspective that he has. I know he's someone that the guys definitely, really appreciate the perspective of and lean on. And would say the same thing for Marcus Smart, someone who, very much brings it, has, so much knowledge, to share from his the playoff runs that he's had, his approach, his care factor. I do think what those guys, have brought to the table has been significant, for the locker room. Again, not going to sit here and say that everyone is perfect and fully formed or anything to that effect. I think our guys are just now entering their core and increasingly, taking on responsibility themselves, of the standard that, that what we stand for from a team and the ownership, I think, that they take of that and recognize that there's a level at which they need to operate for us to be able to get to where we all believe, we're going to be able to get to. So I think those guys have been terrific in what they've brought to the table, and there has been, real growth from the guys with that in mind and independently of that as well. Thanks, everyone.